So The Amazing Adventures of Kavalier and Clay tells a story of a young man who leaves war-torn Europe behind, emigrates to New York, and goes to Brooklyn to live with his cousin, and becomes this amazing comic book artist at a time when comic books were really kind of just coming to the fore. The story is about his escape from war, but it's also kind of voyage of discovery for him and for his cousin, who's also kind of discovering his own identity.
There are three distinct visual worlds that we needed to achieve with this design. There's old world Europe, which actually travels from Prague to battlefields to Auschwitz concentration camps. There's the kind of realism of New York in the 1940s. And then there's the comic book world, which is obviously full of colour, huge. So a seamless collaboration between set and video and lighting was going to be fundamental to get us through the very expansive list of places that the story goes to, but also get between them incredibly quickly.
They also had to, in some instances, sit simultaneously on stage next to one another, but it also allows those worlds to overlap and for characters to move between them in quite kind of dynamic and cinematic ways.
The opera opens with old world European scenes.
The world of Prague and of the war is kind of this monochromatic, grainy world. It's a sort of stylistic representation which feels like it's full of danger and movement and risk and drama, but it's slightly removed from reality in some ways. And we represent that through projection with quite sort of stark, high contrast graphical treatments, quite noirish actually, kind of film noirish. And it's shadowy and you're not quite sure what's happening, and it also evokes a kind of sense of memory as well.
And then there's New York in the 1940s. We've pushed into a much more realistic world. So we have a series of projection mapped backgrounds, whether it's on scrims or sliding panels. And those worlds are reinforced with extremely naturalistic and quite detailed props that kind of ground us in that place.
It's really kind of saturated colour. There's a lot of movement, dynamism, it's bright lights. So it's this kind of like real rich kind of photographic world in a way. And then the world of the comic book is again this kind of really colourful, exciting, kind of vibrant world, nodding to those old-fashioned printing techniques, so paper textures and sort of bleeding ink, and that has a bit of nostalgia to it, but it's also kind of fantastical as well.
We've tried to celebrate the full comic book creation process in the projection design, so from the sketching to the inking to the colouring to the printing, all of those parts of making a comic book are represented at some point or another.
We took quite a lot of inspiration from the kind of mechanics of the way that cartoons and comics work, so framing and split screen and thinking about the way in which the stage can represent the comic book page in some ways.
So the blend between what's physical, what's lighting and what's projected imagery, that the flexibility that gives us to sort of open up a scene in a very comic book-like way or kind of slide across to the next scene, that really is where we start to lift some of those stories, bring them to life.
The other major thing obviously in all of this is Mason's music and Gene's libretto. And you know, the music gave us so much guidance. It was probably the biggest inspiration in some ways as to what the tone and feel and kind of dynamic of the piece should be. And I hope what we've done really is make visually manifest what the music is doing, you know, and to kind of graft together visual ideas and musical ideas has been amazing, really.
I personally felt huge resonance with Joe and Sam and the way that they think about the world. And I think the really big questions that maybe the opera is asking about the meaning of making art.
You can find great comfort from art, you can provoke questions through art, you can use art to draw attention to important issues. There's no guarantee that history will be changed, but I think there is a pursuit of a better future that these characters represent, which I think is really, really inspiring. And I think, you know, particularly at this moment in history, the story of an immigrant coming to America and bringing together different cultures to create art that speaks to lots of people is a really powerful message.